Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I am your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, 31 Days of Horror, Volume 7, Day 4 is coming at you live, and yes, we are definitely going to be exploring a very, very unique film here from Mondo Macabro. It's from 1983. It's a Spanish film, and it is called Human Animals. Now, this is a film I relatively knew nothing about. Actually, I shouldn't say relatively. I didn't know anything about this movie. But when it comes to Mondo Macabro titles, if you're like me and love world cinema, they really do a great job of releasing really obscure and strange and oddity and really fun films from around the world. And this is no exception to the rule. Let's put it that way. This is definitely one of those films that you kind of have to see to believe, in a sense, because it's very much a one-off. It really is. So, Human Animals from 1983. It doesn't really. I can't say the director's name, but there's the cast. There's only 3 people, and they're really not in a lot of other stuff. The one dude in this film, he has quite a few acting credits and stuff like that. But overall, pretty much a kind of an unknown cast. But so the premise of Human Animals, basically, the movie starts out with a series of nuclear explosions. It's like stock footage. I think we've all seen those type of those explosions before, that footage before. Anyways, these 3 people, 2 men and a woman, they wake up on a deserted island. One of the men and the woman, they're dressed all nice and stuff like that, and the other guy is just kind of whatever. Anyways, so they kind of come to, and they realize that they don't really have any memory, and they also can't talk. So they kind of get their bearings straight, and they start to explore this island and stuff like that. And basically, it's kind of implied that the nuclear explosions has wiped out the whole world's population, and these are the last 3 people on Earth. So right there, they kind of figure out through pictures and stuff that the woman and one of the guys is the brother and sister, and the other guy is like their friend or could be the woman's boyfriend. We're not entirely sure what's going on there. So they start to explore the island, looking for, just water and things to eat and stuff like that. So there's this really bizarre scene where they come across water and they kind of get attacked by these crabs. It's very, very strange at the beginning of the film. The dominant male, he smashes one down, and, they start to eat and stuff like that. And of course, they start moving on. They start to explore the island a little bit more. They come across this lighthouse that has a dog in it. And, and that's kind of interesting. And then the dog leads them to more of the tropical side of the island where, there's fresh water and there's lots of fruit and stuff. And then they set up shop. And then basically the whole movie is them just trying to survive in the most primitive ways because, like I said, they don't have memory of where they came from. They can't talk. And there's no people. So they have to resort to hunting and living like that. So that is the premise of the movie. Now, my thoughts on this one. Now, this is a crazy, crazy movie, man, because first up, like I said, they wake up from these explosions. They can't talk. Yes, this movie has absolutely no dialogue in it whatsoever. It runs close to 98 minutes. Oddly enough, super entertaining through the whole movie. It's kind of an interesting exploration on, humans that come from modern times that are forced to be like living primitive. It's kind of like society or the people are like humans going backwards in time. It's very interesting on how they did this. It just turns into a huge sexcapade, though, is really what it is. Like I said, there's 2 men, a woman, and then the dog comes into play too. And this one explores everything. It explores, how humans have to adapt to their surroundings and, start hunting and fishing and building things, just surviving and stuff. But then, the natural instinct of humans is to have sex too. And, it doesn't matter if you have a sister or, a dog or whatever. Like I said, this one explores, there's like a little bit of rape in here. There's, that male dominance thing that's going on. It's that interaction, the fight for survival when it comes to even like, eating and having sex and stuff like that. All that is prevalent here. But yeah, it gets really strange. It does really get strange because we have interactions between, the dominant male who kind of takes the woman, he rapes her and she kind of likes it, but then the brother watches and then he gets jealous and then the brother takes his sister and, a dog gets involved. So we're exploring rape and incest and bestiality and just a whole pile of craziness in this movie. It gets really wild, but it's a very, very beautiful film. It's shot like in the Canary Islands in Spain. It's got lots of really great shots, wide shots and stuff. The island's beautiful. It's got so much tropical scenes and stuff. It's really well put together. It's just got really bizarre content that's going on. But then again, when you really think about it, if you were convinced that you're the last 3 people on Earth, your instincts are just going to be like, this doesn't really matter if I'm taking my sister or not. Does it? But yeah, it's kind of an interesting film because it progresses into, the whole jealousy thing where, the 2 males, they're fighting over her and she's kind of getting pissed off about this whole thing and she's kind of leaning towards the dog and, oh man, it's really, really bizarre. And it's got a pretty crazy ending to it also. I think it's pretty satisfying. It's heartbreaking and satisfying at the same time. But it's that instincts, that's that whole level of survival element to the film that it's very exploitive, though it's very exploitive. I mean, the female in this movie is pretty much naked the entire movie. Like, there's nothing but tits and ass and muff hanging out, and there's lots of penis in this. There's just a lot of damn nudity. It's very like you would be when you're exploring like a primitive type film, back in the day. I mean, they literally are killing animals and using the furs as, as some of their clothing and stuff like that. So, but very interesting film. I love the dog in this movie. Very smart. It's kind of cool, and it shows again human nature and how dominant males can be such assholes and stuff. Like there's a scene where the dog goes out and he purposely hunts this rabbit and kills it and brings them the food. They cook it up and then they're like, no, you can't fucking have any, kind of thing like that. It's like very, very odd like that. But the dog is fucking cool in this movie. But yeah, I wouldn't classify this as a straight up horror film in the traditional sense, but in reality, when you really look at the narrative of this, if you woke up from a nuclear explosion and the whole world's population was dead except for you and a couple other people, that's pretty horrific. There is some horrific scenes in this towards the end of the movie, but on the surface, it doesn't scream horror. It's more of like a sci-fi with horror elements kind of to it and stuff. One thing about the movie I really did like is the soundtrack. The music actually fits quite well for the most part. There's a few pieces of music that are kind of a little bit wonky and stuff, but do still kind of fit. So that was kind of enjoyable to watch and listen and stuff like that. But again, a movie with no dialogue, it's all about the visuals, and I think the cinematographer did a very good job of capturing this island and just how beautiful it was, and just kind of exploring the lighter side of the human survival, the elements of survival for the film, which really does work in this. And like I said, it's like 98 minutes, but it rips by. The time is just, it goes by so quick. I was so intrigued in this movie, and it did definitely help that the lead female was beautiful and she was naked the entire time too, so that was helpful. But it was a really, really bizarre film, and you were just like, what's gonna happen next? Is that really gonna happen? Like, is she really gonna do this with the dog? It's crazy. It's pretty crazy stuff. So but I highly recommend this for maybe like a one-time watch. If you want something very, very bizarre and different, like a one-off, definitely check out Human Animals from Mondo Macabro. It's still readily available. But yeah, definitely one you gotta see to believe. Actually, yeah, the one dude in this movie, the male dominant dude, not the brother, he actually was in Curse of the Devil, a Paul Naschy film. I think the female actually had an uncredited role in, if I looked it up, and she was uncredited in Panic Beach, was another Paul Naschy film, which makes sense, which makes a lot of sense though too. But yeah, definitely an odd one here. I'm going to come in at about a 7.5 out of 10. It's a solid film. It's not going to be for everybody. Just put it that way. Oddly enough, this is the third modern movie I've watched recently that had no dialogue. I recently watched Mad God, the Phil Tippett animated movie that's on Shudder, and that one has no dialogue. And it's crazy. Like, it's just nightmarish, man. It's just visually just a nightmare the entire time you're watching it. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense at times, but it has no dialogue. And Vinegar Syndrome released Master of the World, which is an older Italian film from like the 80s or whatever that doesn't have any dialogue in it either. So I've watched 3 modern films with no dialogue recently. It's very strange. But yeah, Human Animals, it's exactly what it is. It's very, very bizarre. You got to check it out. Mondo Macabro, thank you for this one. The transfer is really good. There is a disclaimer at the beginning saying there's a couple scenes that are a little bit fuzzy or kind of like shake a little bit, but that's how the elements were. It was actually on the original elements. So, but it's hardly noticeable. I think that even if they didn't have that disclaimer, you probably wouldn't even really notice too much, maybe a little bit, but yeah, Human Animals, definitely bizarre. Got to see it to believe it. So yeah. that's going to conclude day 4 here on the 31 Days of Horror. And yes, I'll be back tomorrow with day 5, and I'll hope to see you then. Deuces!